Conference. We're going to build the best football program in the SEC Conference.
You have now arrived at Stadium and Gale.
The kick, it's been blocked again! How about it? It's been blocked again! It's going to heat one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone! It's a touchdown! And the Gators have won the game! Tyreek Cleveland! How about it? I can't believe what I just saw! Dropping back to throw. Pops and fires the ball over the middle. It's Story! It's Story! Got a touchdown! Story got a touchdown! Oh, man! Story's got a touchdown! Ahmad Black, in his final game as a Gator, takes it all the way home and sends Urban out the winner.
You have now arrived at Stadium and Gale.
Boys and girls, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Stadium and Gale. It's your favorite Uncle Silk.
It's Dan.
And Delatory.
Same corner, same time. Beautiful morning in Sunshine State, man. How y'all boys feeling? Y'all good?
I've never been better, to be honest with you. Had myself a great weekend. Downtown St. Pete. I went to a great new restaurant Friday here in Tampa called Pont Modern American. If you live here, go check it out. But great weekend, great vibes. I have a cold front coming in on Wednesday, so it's going to be chilly.
Very nice.
Late 1-3.
We had a crazy thunderstorm, like lightning that woke me up last night. So not beautiful up here. Maybe that's the storm that's bringing it in. Baseball all weekend for me. Bachelor party, leaving Wednesday, leaving Thursday. So trying to stay mentally checked in these next 72 hours.
Yeah, Silk and I got the invite Saturday night. Silk, I think you were already asleep.
I got an invite?
Yeah.
Threw it out there.
Yeah, he threw it out there. So
What the hell? I didn't see it, man. That's what I did learn about the crew on this show, that I'm the old guy for sure, man. I was knocked out. I woke up to a bunch of texts from y'all hanging out with celebs and all type of stuff, man. I was like, yo, what did I miss last night? I didn't see the invite, though. Where you going to Tennessee?
Nashville, yeah.
So I may be going to Tennessee. Kids spring break start Friday. I think we're going to go up to Gatlinburg, possibly.
Where's that in relation, Dan?
It's about 3 hours. It's on the East Coast, right there on the corner of North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, right there. Gatlinburg's fun. Pigeon Forge is nearby. Elite tourism vibes.
Pigeon Forge I think, is where we may stay, and then Gatlinburg is on the to-do list. I'm still playing it by ear. I'll know what the wife says by the time she get home from work. But I appreciate the invite. I'm gonna have to pull up, bro.
Only 3 hours per day.
You can get yourself some moonshine there in Gatlinburg.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm with it. Any Tennessee listeners, man, give me the deets. I'll let your boy. I may be in town.
Yeah, Tennessee Mike, hook him up. All right, boys, we got a great show today. We got a lot going on. We've got some coaches coming to staff. Big pause there. We have a coach leaving, an assistant staffer leaving. I got a lot with spring practice. We've got Austin Armstrong speaking to the staff, or speaking to the media for the first time. And then we have Florida Gators legend from the 95 national championship run, former All-American, played in the NFL for a number of years, and father of Florida Gators tight end Jonathan Odom, Jason Odom, joining us. And then we've got a lot of recruiting updates and everything else for this week. So should be a content-filled show. But as always, we do want to thank our presenting sponsor, Alan Horn, with State Farm Insurance there near Valdosta. But if you're in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, or Alabama, visit him at alanhorninsurance.com or give him a call, 706-692-2888 for all of your insurance needs. Again, Alan Horn with State Farm Insurance, 706-692-2888. On, was that Tuesday, or was it Monday after we recorded, the Gators announced officially that defensive quality control analyst Russ Callaway would be promoted to the tight end coach position. So, Nick, give us the rundown on Russ Callaway.
So I think it makes sense. I think we said, and we kind of agreed, Billy's not going to make a hire just to make one for spring, and then it's a bad fit and you have to figure something out, in a month. So Russ has a lot of experience in the NFL, was the offensive coordinator at Samford, had some great offenses there. To me, though, as we've said so many times on the show, what's your tight end coaching doing on the field? I think that guy needs to be an ace recruiter. And I don't know that Russ is. Don't know that he isn't, but I think that's where I'll be watching to see when kids start visiting. Hey, loved Russ, loved Coach Callaway.
Also seen I didn't mean to cut you.
Go ahead.
Also seen on his resume, I can't remember which article it was, but that he did have a recruiting coordinator on his resume. And usually when you see that on the resume, you're highly thought of as a recruiter at your previous gig. So I thought that was interesting. We'll see how it relates to South Florida recruiting, Southeast. But he does have some recruiting, just gems on his resume that you should like.
Yeah. To give you a brief rundown on him, graduated from Valdosta State. He was a quarterback there. He joined, he was a defensive analyst at Nick Saban's staff at Alabama, where they won back-to-back BCS national championships. He also assisted Kirby Smart with the linebackers on that team. Then he went to Murray State, spent 2 seasons there where he worked with wide receivers, and Silky mentioned was the recruiting coordinator there. Then spent 5 seasons at Samford, where he was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He was wide receivers coach from 15 to 16, and then 17 to 19 served as offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Spent the 2020 season as an offensive analyst at LSU. Was an offensive analyst with the New York Giants in 2021, and then obviously served on the defensive side of the ball in 2022. And we've talked about Billy Napier often hires people that were previously on the offensive side of the ball, wide receivers coach, offense coordinator, whatever it might be, to be on the defensive side of the or to be on the opposite side of the ball to help them prepare and game plan, things of that nature. So we see the promotion of Russ Callaway into that tight end coach position. So again, don't know a ton about his recruiting, especially at this level, but certainly comes with a solid resume of a tight ends coach. With that being said, Nick, do you guys
like the hire? Do you like the hire? What's your opinion on it, Nick?
I think fans were like mad about it, but what was the sexy name out there? Like what name? Jawan Sider wasn't coming to coach tight ends. So like what name was going to get like the fans pumped? So
Tim Brewster, it's a name they know. Fans like names they know. So Tim Brewster, even though he's washed, people would have liked the name. Like we love when Tim got hired, but we didn't really see the fruits of that labor. It's just a retreaded name that people are familiar with. Right. I do like his resume. He's a former OC. He's more than qualified, in my opinion, as far as coaching the tight end position. Like you said, Nick, you need a guy that's it's not a whole lot he's going to do at practice, so you need an ace recruiter. So we'll see what his recruiting look like, but I think he's more than qualified to coach the position of tight ends, and I don't know any sexy tight end hires out there.
Well, and you have to think about the position as well, right? I mean, how many tight end coaches are there for, years or, decades even, right? I mean, there's a few, right? Like Tim Brewster's a name that you've heard of that's been in that role for a long time, but, oftentimes you're going to be a tight end coach first. And, there's just not a lot to do, especially in this offense. And a lot of times they make a move, right? To either running back coach or wide receiver. They want to move up to offensive coordinator, whatever it might be. But, I think on the offensive side of the ball, your gateway into coaching is often at that tight end position. So when you look at being an offensive coordinator, you look at working under Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and working, with Ed Orgeron, right? Then you think of the New York Giants, and then you think of, the coaching staff that he worked with at Florida last year. You start to look at the pedigree and you're like, that makes sense, right? So maybe it's not the sexiest hire, but maybe it's the hire that makes the most sense. And you have somebody that's familiar, doesn't need to learn new terms, doesn't going to come in with a completely different, way of doing things, that it makes sense. Is it the sexiest name? No, but I don't know how many sexy tight end coaches there are out there.
And time will tell with recruiting. But the only thing I would be maybe cautious of or that I thought of is how long does he want to stay in college? When you see how much time he's spent in the NFL, is he a guy that wants to stay here and move up? If Jabbar Jaloop goes somewhere, does he want to move up and go to running back or receiver or something like that? Or is he trying to have a good year in 23 and then head back to the league?
Well, I mean, he was only in the
Everybody's
league for a year, right?
2. I think he has a couple NFL teams on his resume.
I believe so.
I thought it was just the one with the Giants, but regardless, I think it's a good opportunity. And, if he's a guy that does well enough this year to get poached by an NFL staff, like, you have to assume that he probably did a pretty good job, right? I mean, that's an assumption, right?
Yeah.
But you have to assume that there's probably some progress that was made. And that means that somebody at the highest level of football, where I think almost everybody aspires to be, thinks that you're talented enough to coach there.
Already.
We'll see. Wide receivers coach Nick, any update there? I know towards the beginning of last week, we thought we were narrowed in, but still no word.
Yeah, still no word. David Decker has been leading the group. He is a graduate assistant, played at UL, not for Billy, but played at UL, then was a GA for Billy at UL and came over. Huge opportunity for him. Like, I think 26, 25, young guy, and getting a chance to lead the Florida Gators wide receivers for an entire spring or until they hire someone. I think with no practice this week and with the players out on spring break, opportunity for more interviews and to figure it out. I don't know that it's been as big of a detriment as I thought, though. Decker's running guys through stuff, and I don't think coaches are going out to recruit right now, so you're not missing that 10th coach to go out and go see kids. You're bringing kids in. So I would like for them to hire someone so I don't have to keep calling people. That'd be great. Maybe do it while I'm in Nashville.
So Billy, when you're listening to this show, probably now you might be one of the people that are watching. Just get that hire done before Nick boards his plane on Thursday morning.
Oh no, after that's fine. I'm PTO, baby.
Yeah. Pass that responsibility off. But with that being said, it was also announced that Jamar Chaney, friend of the program here, who has been as a part of 2 iterations of the Florida Gators coaching staff as an analyst, it has been announced that he's going to be the linebackers coach at Western Kentucky University. So obviously a big loss in terms of name, a guy that got along very well with recruits, really did a great job down in Silk's neck of the woods there in the 5.61. But it can't be said enough that Jamar Chaney did an incredible job at the University of Florida. But this gives him an opportunity to begin his coaching career. So,
what is the word with shout out to my man Jamar Chaney? Absolutely, congratulations. Send him a lot of love on Twitter and also text DMs, all of that, man. Just a great guy. Known him for 2 different staffs, 2 different regimes, but it's just, some people were saying a lot of people, we all thought that he wasn't ready or just personally wasn't ready to jump on as an on the field coach. So that kind of took me by surprise that he took an on the field job, but a guy that absolutely deserved it. I think he's going to be in the SEC or a bigger Power 5 program. If not in a year, 2 years at tops, man. His future's bright for him. Very good recruiter. So just blessings, man.
Yeah,
kill it out there.
There was just no way to get him an on-field job unless you fired Bateman. And I would argue that maybe Bateman is not a great recruiter, but Amari Burney and Ventrell played better than they had in the previous 5 years at Florida. I think he's X's and O's development scheme, great for that linebacker room. So he wasn't going anywhere, and there was just no spot for him. So I think it is a loss. Every single defensive player, not even like just linebackers, leaving campus from a visit, always mention Chaney. So best of luck to him and the Hilltoppers.
Shout out to the Hilltoppers.
Yeah, the big loss.
Go ahead, Dan. No,
I was just going to say big loss, an unfortunate loss. You hope you can keep him around forever. Nick said that you can't, you couldn't put a guy like him on the field, right? Right now, there was not an opening. And, is Florida going to be somebody's first opportunity, to coach? I don't know. Do I think that he's qualified? I don't know him well enough there, but I do think that there's an opportunity and obviously a connection back to Gainesville that if things do go well at Western Kentucky, and an opportunity comes up in the future, at least they're able to get their feet wet somewhere else and learn, right? It's just a different job. And we often like to say that Florida's not a place that you go and you learn on the job, right? You're expected to come in, especially at the salaries that they get paid, to be able to do that job. And not saying that Jamar Chaney can't. I do think that he's going to be very good, and I think he's going to be around coaching for a long time. But I do think being able to get your feet wet somewhere else and then potentially making that return back to Gainesville is certainly something in the cards. But certainly wish him the best of luck. But it is an unfortunate loss. But, Jamar Chaney is – got to worry about himself and his career as well. So congratulations to him. It's a great spot to land.
Yeah, Jamar Chaney helped us get out of that IMG slump. Wrapped fresh on the job. He had a relationship with Kamari Wilson. Just want to give him some flowers. It's an absolute dog. We're going to miss him a little bit on the recruit side of things, but we'll make up for it. Absolutely. Well, before we get Jason on the show, this is a good opportunity for us to get started talking about spring practice. Nick, I think we're 4 practices through. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So with that being said, we do have a few storylines that are starting to emerge. We do have some groups that are starting to, we're starting to be able to look at who the starters are going to be and all of that. But let's start with quarterback. It does look like Graham Mertz is getting a lot of the number 1 reps right now with Jack Miller and Max Brown right behind him. I heard Max Brown slinging the ball a little better than maybe anticipated. But Nick, give us your thoughts on the quarterback position.
So I think it is a competition, and the way that they split reps, Jack will get reps with the ones as well. But from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, it seems like they're trying to give Graham Mertz every opportunity to win this job. Like they would like him to win it. I won't even talk about the first 2 days. We're throwing without pads on to nobody.
Outside of reps, I want to real quick. Outside of reps, what would give you the indication that they want him to win the job? Just curious.
I think the way that they've talked about him, being a veteran, 32 games. They sat him next to Kingsley, who is the quarterback of your offensive line room, and next to Trahada Mitchell, who is the quarterback of your defense. I think that. Listen, I don't know that anyone, even in the fan base, was not excited about this. The people in that building love Graham Mertz, love him. First one in, last one out. Jim Rat.
Yeah, a lunch pail kind of guy.
So they love him. I want to see what he looks like when you're actually playing 11 on 11. So I'm not getting a lot from past skeleton drills.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. If he aligning, and I want you to finish your take on what you were saying with the quarterback room. But yeah, if they aligning him beside Taraji Mitchell and also Kingsley, it's kind of like putting the leaders beside each other. So I can see those vibes for sure.
And I'm not ready to say that it's over. I don't think Jack got a fair shake in the Las Vegas Bowl. Like nobody wanted to be there, and he was hurt the whole year. It'll be interesting. I think Florida's going to be in the market for another quarterback in the transfer portal when it opens in May. Whether that is a guy that can come in and start right away, or just another scholarship type of guy to give you 4 in that room. But quarterback's fine. Definitely different vibes. I was real excited for Ant last spring.
Right.
So different vibes this spring.
Already. I expected them to try to chase the quarterback. After we missed Rashada, they need somebody in to add to that quarterback room. So not shocking there. We'll see who that is. A lot of quarterback competitions going on around the country at Texas, Ole Miss Lane. He got quite the battle going on out there. It's like a 3-way thing. And also Alabama. Everybody got their eyes on Milroy and Ty Simpson out there. So a lot of battles to watch. We'll see how it all shake out this spring. But
yeah, no surprise Lane Kiffin is involved in a 3-way thing. Offensive line.
Sounds like his bag.
Offensive line, it looks like we've got from left to right, it looks like we've got Austin Barber at left tackle, then Mazuka at left guard, Egu Khan at center, Richie Leonard at right guard, and then seeing both Damian George and Keontae Goodwin at right tackle. Any additional clarity there, Nick, or are we going to still see some fine-tooth combing of that offensive line starting spot?
I think it'll be Goodwin, but that'll be a battle. I almost thought that they would kick George inside
Mhm.
and put him next to Goodwin, but they love Richie Leonard. I think Richie Leonard is a good player. And I thought Richie Leonard would maybe even get a shot at center to push Kingsley and say, like, hey, this is not your job. You have to earn it again. But I like Richie. I like that offensive line. Mazuka's been one of the guys, especially from the transfer portal, that I've been impressed with. Rob Sale was really high on him. He says, you tell him something in practice that's a different scheme or a different technique, and he just picks it up. Like, football comes easy to him. Jabbar Jalouk said you don't want to be in a dark alley with him. So now you've got smart and mean. I'll take that all day in an offensive lineman.
Absolutely. Are we seeing anybody else? I know Jake Slaughter is a guy that is potentially up for that center spot as well. What does it look like beyond that starting 6 that we just named there? Obviously 5 with the addition of either Goodwin or George. But I know Billy Napier said that they have about 10 guys. So what are those other 4 that are pushing?
I don't think they have 10 yet.
Okay.
But I think I like Roger Kearney a lot. I'm always hesitant to talk about freshmen, especially
He's getting reps on the 2 deep though.
He's getting reps with the 2s, which is why I bring him up. And I had another writer who does a lot of film breakdowns tell me Roger Kearney had the best film of any interior lineman. Loved him. Those five that you mentioned, I like. David Connor's been out in a black jersey, a non-contact jersey. I think Barbers looks good. Has looked good on the left side. Riley Simmons is getting a little bit of run, but for really, like, Jordan Herman, Damian George, Keontae Goodwin, maybe Roger Kearney, Richie. Those 5. I don't think Florida's got 10.
All right. At running back, obviously we have Montreal Johnson and ETN as your starting 2. But it looks like Cam Carroll is doing well as well. A little bit maybe more impressive in some of the film breakdowns that's been shared on social media. Now, caution everybody when we talk about film shared on social media, but it does look like he's maybe a little bit more impressive than maybe people were imagining.
He bet on himself. That's one thing. I mean, he only has 1 year of eligibility left, and they asked him to come to a room that is returning 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns. And he said, sure. I think it'll be hard for him to crack that rotation, but he's a guy that you can put on special teams, on all 4 special teams, could even be a returner. He's got legit speed at almost 230 pounds. And also, if I'm him, get him where you fit in. Florida hasn't really used the running backs in the passing game. Live on that jugs machine. Show them, hey, I can be your third down back. I can catch passes. I can be involved in the passing game. He's been in a non-contact jersey a little bit, but still going through drills with the running backs.
And then we have Jason Odom waiting. So before we do that, let's just give one final review of the wide receiver room. It looks like freshman Andy Jean is doing very well. Nick, who do we have as starters at wide receiver?
I'm breaking my rule, not hyping freshmen. Love Andy Jean. I think I said on Twitter, his route running reminds me of like Van Jefferson, but he's got like an Antonio Callaway, like shifty speed to him. Everyone I've talked to says at some point this year he will be starting, and they wouldn't be surprised if it's week 1. Just a really mature football player. Lives in the facility, Dan.
I love it.
Things you love to hear. I like him a lot. I think Aiden Mizell is coming along as well. He hasn't played football in a while because of his injury, so he's coming through. I'm not as low on the wide receiver room as I was last
year. Yeah,
a little higher on the wide receiver room this year.
Wow, look at you.
It might just be Andy Jean.
Hey, it only takes a couple.
A lot of speed. What was missing in that room was speed and separation. So a lot of these guys can run routes and they have the speed to separate. So good job by the staff for just bringing in what the room was missing. Most importantly, you know what I'm saying. So I like shockingly, I think Graham Mertz is going to have a better room of weapons than what AR had. So we'll see how that benefits him.
It's Mertz Mania time. All right. With that being said, let's give a quick shout out to our friends.
Chop that up. You know, I'm gonna chop that up. Got to put that on the streets.
As always, let's give a shout out to our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Go visit homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code Stadium and Gale. They are running a bunch of specials for March Madness. And I don't know, probably about 90 different schools right now that Home Field Apparel offers, including about 17 different unique items for the University of Florida. So go check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. Promo code Stadium and Gale. And with that being said, we welcome University of Florida Hall of Fame member, two-time All-SEC, unanimous All-American, one of the greats on the Florida Gators offensive line from the 90s, Jason Odom, to the show. Jason, it is a pleasure to have you today, my friend.
Well, thank you very much. That's quite an honor to be on the show, and I appreciate that intro. And sometimes it's good to hear. It's been so many years ago that I don't even remember if it's true.
Beyond that, won the Jacobs blocking trophy in 94, 95, played 5 years with the Tampa Bay Bucks as well. Jason, want to kind of go back to the beginning. You were at UF during the heyday of Steve Spurrier coming back to Florida and really reviving the University of Florida program. But before we even get there, originally from the Bartow area here in Florida, how'd you ultimately end up at the University of Florida?
Listen, I tried to play a good game, but really I grew up a Gator from the moment I knew what football was. I was a Gator. Family were Gators. And, when I started getting recruiting, I think I started getting recruited in like the 9th grade because of my size. I don't think I was very good at that time, but I was just so much bigger than everybody. But at that time, I tried to act like, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. But in the back of my mind, the whole time I knew where I was going to go. I went on an official visit to Michigan the first weekend we were allowed to do officials. And my visit was terrible. The coach at the time had me in his office, wouldn't let me out of his office, wanted a commitment. And I said, when I finally got out of his office without committing, I said to myself, I'm not going to waste anybody's time or my own to do this, 4 more times. And I canceled the rest of my visits and committed to Florida. And I was the first commitment of the 1992 class, which ended up being the class that really turned things around.
That's incredible. I want to completely fast forward like 30 years.
Well, let me jump in.
Yeah.
What is Steve Spurrier's recruiting pitch?
It's funny. I just saw him a little over a week ago at an event at his restaurant that Chris Doring's mortgage company sponsored. And I talked to him about recruiting. And I said, Coach, you remember coming to Bartow and watching me practice baseball? And I said, I was taking ground balls from third base and I still remember he was over by the first base dugout and he was like mimicking what I was doing, like he was taking grounders. And, from his, recruiting, coming to my house, coming to the school, Jim Collins was the guy who actually recruited me. Love him still to this day, still talk to him. Everything about the recruiting, it was really easy because even though I was kind of, fibbing to everyone, I was going to Florida. There was nowhere else, but Spurrier was a big part of that. And plus, there was a lot of opportunity to play. And so even though I wanted to go to Florida, it was a perfect scenario for me too, because they were graduating both tackles in 91. And so in 92, it ended up being me and Reggie Green as the starters.
Well, that's crazy.
So back then, like social media wasn't what it is now. So what was the vibes around Winter Haven when you're the big recruit? Steve Spurrier's coming into town. Like what's the fanfare for the locals?
Well, I grew up and went to Bartow High School. I was actually born at Winter Haven High School, but
right.
But Bartow is Gator heavy, and so is Polk County, obviously, with being the home of Ben Hill Griffin and their family. And so everybody was excited. Everybody was, when I was not telling people, everybody was like, why aren't you going to Florida? Why aren't you going to Florida? And I remember I had one of my dear friends. We went to the same church, and before I told anybody, I went to church that Sunday morning with a Gator tie on. And when they saw me show up with the Gator tie on, they're like, did you make the decision? And I just shook my head, yes. And they were huge Seminole fans. They were one of the few Seminole fans, and which they were also recruiting me. And I had a visit set up there, and I can't believe it. And that's kind of how it happened. And but the social media wasn't even around. Internet wasn't invented back then. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah. I'm glad you ruined church for those Seminoles, though, man.
Yeah.
Jason, with that being said, I want to talk a lot about your time at UF, but your son is now a tight end at the University of Florida, obviously a highly recruited guy himself. What kind of guidance did you give him when he was going through the recruiting process? Because I know obviously he committed to Florida, but I know he was open to a ton of other schools as well. How did you navigate how to deal with that and not losing focus and choosing the right school for him and not just following his dad's footsteps?
Well, it's interesting because I coached him at Jesuit here in Tampa, and I tried to be dad only during the recruiting process, and so I never pushed Florida. In fact, we would do this little game where him, and his mom would just be sitting there, and we'd be like, "Okay, on the count of 3, list your top 3," and we never put him on the spot to give us the one. And I, on purpose, never included Florida in my top 3 because I wanted it to be his decision, not mine. I didn't want to influence him to go there because sometimes that can backfire. Even though it's my alma mater, it can backfire if it's not the right place for him. He's not feeling it in his heart. So I never said Florida in my top 3. We probably did that 10 or 15 times through his recruiting process, and he went to a bunch of different places. And I honestly thought that he would be a good fit for the Big Ten, and just because the way he's built and kind of the kind of the person he is, and we were going to a barbecue at Florida, just unofficial visit, and we were on the way up there, and he goes, "Dad, I think I'm going to commit today," and I'm like, "What?" But I was driving down the interstate, and both my wife and I wanted to turn around and look at him, like, where did that come from? And so that's kind of how it happened. But no, I didn't influence him at all. A lot like playing football. He when he was a toddler, we would get up in the morning. He would be up before everyone watching ESPN and watching football highlights. And so he's been a football guy since day one. And I honestly, after my playing days with the Bucs, I didn't watch a whole lot of football, and it was just kind of in him. But sports is kind of centered around our whole family. His mom played basketball at Florida. She was a scholarship player at Florida, and that's how we met. So it's pretty special for both of us. And, to see that culminate for this past year, him getting his first real time on the field, catching a couple of touchdown balls. The first one at Florida was really special for all of us. My wife and I and his grandparents were in the stands for that. So it was fun to watch.
He mentioned that after we talked to him after that game, post-game media, and he mentioned that everyone was at the game and that made it special. But he needs to learn timing. Don't surprise your dad with that kind of information when he's driving a car down the interstate.
Exactly. It was a dangerous 5 seconds, and I'm trying to turn my head around and look at him. Are you serious?
Did you feel good a little bit though? It warmed your heart a little bit. Like you had to feel a little excited about him going to your alma mater though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was excited, but kind of in the back of my mind, I'm going, is he making this decision for himself? Because this is your journey, son. I want to be for yourself. And so I actually said that to him. I'm like, just as long as it's your decision, not for any other reason but other than your own heart wants to go. And he says, yeah. And so that was all I needed to hear.
Raise him right, man.
Fully supportive after that.
Has he given you, it's more topical than anything. Has he given you any update on new tight end coach Russ Callaway and kind of his relationship with him, coaching style, anything like that? Or
yeah, he said he really likes him, and got to know him last year. I guess he was on the staff or has been on the staff a little bit in some form or fashion. But he said he really likes him. He really liked Pegler, and so he's excited. Obviously, he's still rehabbing, so he's not participating in the spring, but he's excited for what the future holds.
That's awesome. Well, I want to get back to your playing days. You were there from 92 to 95. Obviously, a lot of SEC championships. You guys playing the Nebraska game. But before we get into kind of the playing time, I want to ask, little bit about the personalities. Obviously, you had the ultimate personality in Steve Spurrier. You had guys like James Bates and Anthony, and Danny Werfel's there too. What was it like being on that team, just from kind of a team perspective, just outside of playing ball, but just with those guys and their personality? Seemed like a lot of fun.
Well, and that's what people don't realize is that that whole group, not just my class, but the guys that were in front of me and behind me, we really gelled, and it was a special time at Florida. I mean, that was back when they still had athletic dorms. Most of us lived in Yon Hall for the first few years, and so we were truly a family. So when we got to the locker room, it wasn't like even after practice, it wasn't like everybody was tearing out of there. We hung out before and after everything we did. We made silly games that we played in the locker room all together, all position groups, and just really special time, and still close to a lot of those guys. We're going with James and Tina Bates to an event later this month, and see Chris, and Danny was my roommate in Yon Hall, and still talk to him all the time. Just a really special group of people, my class in particular, but really the whole group around us, the class of 92 on through. So I just love all those guys and the coaches. I mean, I had two coaches in my whole career, which is hard to say. I mean, I played 5 years for the Bucks, all under Tony Dungy, and played for Spurrier all my 4 years. I had two position coaches at Florida, but that's because one of them went to the NFL. So really just, a solid backing and people that believed in us, and just the vibe around the team was really well. You could see things gelling. And the reason why it led up to end up being a national championship the year after I was gone, but it was essentially my class's group. And as you mentioned earlier, we actually played for it in 95 and kind of got our butts whipped. But that was less about talent and more about, that was kind of the first time we'd been on that stage, and maybe didn't give Nebraska as much credit as before the game as they deserved.
Yeah, it broke my heart as a kid. What was practice like for you guys on the Spurrier regime? How competitive was it?
Extremely competitive, and people don't realize that part is even when we do drills within ourselves. So like when we do drills against other offensive linemen, Reggie and I were always paired, and there were many nights I'd go home battered and bruised, and maybe Reggie would say the same thing. Hopefully he'd say the same thing about me, but we would hopefully, yeah. There was no brother-in-law in our group. We were going to make each other better. The guy I practiced against probably 90% of the time, because he was a year ahead of me, he left my senior year, but Kevin Carter was the guy that I practiced against every day. Him and Ellis Johnson are on my side, amazing players, and nobody brother-in-law. There was no patty cake. There was no let's take a play off. We were trying to get our work in and dominate whoever we were against. And so, I mean, how could you not be good playing against the kind of defensive players we had, especially up front? And I think all of them played in the league, and some of them played for a long time, and may end up being in the Hall of Fame. Who knows? So, just it was so great. I remember the coaches. We worked so hard that we got to do things that you don't normally get to do, like towards the end of my career, it'd be like me and Donnie Young were taking defensive reps, knowing that we're never going to play defense, but we wanted to do one-on-one pass rush. So they let us rush on the offensive lineman during one-on-one pass rush drills. And how many times do you get to see that now on a regular basis during the season? Never. But they trusted us and our work ethic, and it made it extremely fun for us.
What was your go-to pass rush move?
Well, I always went back to, I don't know if you remember a guy named Bill Gunner. He was like an 8th year senior back then. He was like 26 when I was 18 years old. And I was a pretty good, even though I came from Barton, we didn't pass the ball a lot. I had pretty good feet and could pass protect. And the first pass rush, one-on-one pass pro I did against Bill Gunner, he fake spinned me. So he comes up and wiggles, like he goes into a spin, and I jump hard inside. And he didn't spin. He just went back out of it. And I didn't even touch the guy, and he beat me. And I'm like, that was amazing.
That's a welcome to college moment right there.
Yeah. Hey, rookie, you got to be smart, just not good up here. So that I would use all kinds of fake spins, slap the hands down. I mean, I had a little wiggle in me, and I'd always Cooper Carlisle, who played after me and played a long time in the league. I got to rush against him, and I'd give him nightmares, because when you're rushing against guys you practice with every day, it wasn't like I had a special move. I just knew everybody else's weaknesses like they knew mine.
Smart.
Jason, I want to talk a little bit about your time, wrapping up at Florida and then going to the NFL. Obviously, incredible career at the University of Florida. You go to the NFL, you go under, you go from one, very kind of outspoken, loud, kind of different kind of guy in Steve Spurrier to, a pretty buttoned up guy in Tony Dungy and everything else. What was that transition from college to the NFL like for you?
It was different. We had our first rookie mini camp. Got to meet Tony and his staff there, and I just remember the first mini camp. It was in helmets and jerseys and shorts, and there was no like shells or even those pads on your shoulders. And we went out there, and it was literally 100% real football without pads on. This is before the collective bargaining agreement had mandated what you could do it to players at practice. And I got done with that first session, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is for real. And so I kind of was always one of those guys that tried not to overstep my bounds. I knew I could play, but I didn't know, on that level, where I stood. And after rookie minicamp, they cut the right tackle, and I'm like, wow, they must think I'm okay. So I didn't start game one, but like maybe the sixth game of that year, we had lost a bunch of games already in '96, and so I was named the starter. Unfortunately, hurt my knee the week after my first start against Denver. And the Bucs weren't on national TV back then a lot. And my first start was against Denver on national TV. Played against Alfred Williams, I think was his name, who was a Pro Bowl player and did well. And actually tore up my knee in practice. Mike Allstott kneed me in my left knee, and thanks to him for the arthritis I have today. So I missed a couple of games with the knee scope, and then finished out, I think, the last 5 or 6 games starting. But I played both left and right tackle that year, and then was a starter for the next 3.5 years. The last year I was on injured reserve because of my back. But Tony, to get back to your regular question, Tony was just a guy that he wasn't a yeller, but very businesslike approach to practice. And even though we were like 1-6 at my rookie year starting off, you knew we were building something. And then obviously in '97, I started every game. We turned it around, went to the first playoff game in like 15 years in Tampa. Had a home playoff game against Detroit, I think it was, and won it. And there couldn't be two more opposite guys as head coaches, but both great in their own way. I mean, I love Spurrier's frankness, and I really appreciated Tony's just kind of humble businessman approach, and everything he brought to the table, and obviously some great teammates in Tampa. I mean, my goodness, it seems like every year one of my teammates is going in the Hall of Fame now.
Jason, let's get back to you speaking of coaches and Steve Spurrier. After the '95 loss to Nebraska, what was Steve's message to the team? What was his demeanor?
One of the things I remember a lot is that it seemed like, because the hoopla around that game was different than the other bowl games we had gone to. We'd gone to bowl games every year, and some of them were big bowls. But when we went to that one, it seemed like we were always waiting on Nebraska when we did combined team events together, and they had us waiting around a lot. There was some aggravation both on the coaches' staff and the players, and it's like we waited on them to show up everywhere. And I remember Coach saying something to the effect of, "Well, we know what we have to do next time." And he wasn't necessarily talking about on the field. I'm sure some of that was in there, but it was about, we're not going to be beholden to someone else's schedule. We'll make our own, if someone has to wait on us, they have to wait on us. So he was learning. That's one thing he was great at. He was learning from not necessarily mistakes that we made pre-game, but just kind of all the surrounding things. Very detailed guy, and could make adjustments, with the best of them, whether it be in game, day of, or a year later, as it were for the '96 team.
Jason, talk to us a little bit about kind of post-career. I know you're here in Hillsborough County, you're sheriff now, but what's life been like post your time in the NFL?
Well, my exodus from the NFL wasn't great. My fourth year was a contract year. I had, some back trouble, which I'd battled all through college and in the pros. And my fourth year, I think it was the fourth or fifth game, I went down with a back injury, and it wouldn't respond to the treatments that I'd had in the past, and I couldn't get back. So I ended up having surgery in '99 to repair some discs in my back, and they thought that I could come back and in 2000. So the Bucs signed me to a new deal to play left tackle for the 2000 season, and I lasted 1 day in training camp, and my back did the exact same thing. And through several doctor visits through the next couple of weeks and months, it was really clear that I had no option other than retire and spinal fusion at some point, which both have happened now. I didn't opt for the spinal fusion then, but I've had to have it since, which they told me I was going to have because my discs were just so bad in my back. And so my exodus from the league was way premature. I mean, I was a starter. You hear a lot of guys saying, well, they shouldn't have cut me. Well, that wasn't the case for this. They wanted me, and I wanted to be there. I just literally couldn't play. I mean, my daughter was born at that point, Jonathan's older sister, Lauren. And I couldn't even pick her up off the ground during that time. But to answer your question, after all that happened, I lost a bunch of weight. My back got okay enough for me to, try to get a job. And I said, well, there were two things I always loved as a kid. And one was football, and the other was law enforcement. And so I decided to, with my wife's blessing, obviously, give that a run. And I joined the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in 2007, I think it was. And I had about 8 years with them. But in 2014, 15, my back was never great, but I was able to pass their physical, at least, to get the job. But they had moved me to a desk job at that point, and I couldn't even sit at a desk all day long. And I wasn't even wearing a gun belt anymore. I was wearing a polo and khakis, and I couldn't even sit there and do that job. So I actually went out on disability for a second time with the sheriff's office in 2015. And so I've been on disability ever since then.
But you're coaching now.
Well, I coached while Jonathan was at Jesuit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I coached at Jonathan while he was at Jesuit. And that was only because I was picking him up from practice one day, and who's a dear friend of mine now, the head coach at Jesuit, Matt Thompson, who does an incredible job. He's like, hey, can you come out and help us? And I said, yeah, Matt, but I can't be the guy. I don't move very well. I can't stand for long periods of time. I got all these issues, knees and back. Now I'm old and everything else hurts too. And so he says, no, just come out and help when you can. Well, that turned into the following year, him walking up to me one day going, hey, I hope you don't mind, but I let the offensive line coach go. You're the guy. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But
congratulations.
I told him, I said, listen, my oldest daughter is playing college volleyball, man. When Jonathan's done, I'm missing all her games, and I'm not that parent. I want to be at the games. And volleyball is one of those, even in college, they play a couple of times during the week, and they play every Friday night in the fall and most Saturdays. And so I said, after the 2020 season, Matt, I'm gone. No matter how bad you need me or you want me, I'm gone. And so that was the truth. I got to watch her. I left Jesuit after Jonathan graduated, and I got to watch my, now with COVID, she got an extra year. So I watched her 2021 season, and I still talk to Matt. He still asks me when I'm coming back, and I haven't made that decision yet. I don't know if I can to be on the sidelines. I mean, if you watch me on the sidelines at a Jesuit game, that was, years ago now, I'm trying to find places to get comfortable. I'm trying to change position, lean on stuff. And I didn't want to be the guy out there in a 3-wheeled cart. So I never went that far, but it's tough for me to be out there coaching, but I loved it. Love the kids.
What do you
go ahead.
Sorry, what do you tell Jonathan these days when dealing with coaching changes? He went from Mullen to Billy now. What are you guys talks like when you talk to him about just business when it pertains to football?
He's already had as many head coaches as you had in college and the NFL.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. And more position coaches in 1 year than I've had. So, there's been times where I've been a counselor in many respects because his first year was tough. He tore his shoulder up his senior year at Jesuit. And so he had surgery late in the year in 19. Well, when he got out of his sling, COVID hit. So he couldn't even go to the gym. So when he got to Florida, he literally didn't have the ability to play because he was so weak on his left side. And the guy that recruited him had left. And so he had this new coach who didn't know anything about the injury. I mean, I'm sure he was briefed on it, but didn't know when he got there, hey, this kid's been like sitting on the couch after shoulder surgery for 4 months. And so when he got there, that whole 2020 season was terrible for him. He really felt like he couldn't compete. His strength in his upper body was just terrible. And so that whole year we had probably hundreds of conversations on, hey, just, you got to embrace the suck. I know it's bad, but, it'll get better when you get some time to get in the program and get strong. Well, lo and behold, the next spring, he tears the same shoulder up again. And so he fought injury again. And that's been the biggest hurdle for him. Is just everybody knows when you're in college that's when your biggest gains are made strength wise, because you're in programs that really maximize that in nutrition and all those things you need that you don't really get in high school. And he's had a big injury, it seems like, every year. And I've always known he could play, but he's got to have time to be in the program injury free for a while. And that's a key. And sometimes those things you can't control yourself. And so that's kind of been his biggest hurdle. But I've really just tried to play counselor and say, hey, you got to keep your head up. Ultimately, God's got a plan, no matter, you don't know what it is right now, but you got to believe in what he's teaching you, what he's showing you, and fight through all this and let it make you better. And in a lot of ways it has. He's a lot smarter, tougher, and handles adversity better now than way better than he did in 2020.
How do you talk to him about balancing everything? I mean, there's just so much more now, with social media and kind of obviously instant reaction. There's a lot more podcasts, a lot more discussion about it. How do you talk to him about, focus on not just football, but on school and balancing social media and being able to still live, a somewhat normal life as a college kid and kind of blocking out, some of that noise, or what are some of the conversations you have with him from kind of the personal side of the football experience and not just the business side?
That ends up being our biggest rub between he and I, because obviously I'm not a huge social media guy, but that's kind of their world today. And I remember when he was being recruited, we went on a visit, and Jim Collins, the guy who recruited me at Florida, was still coaching football, and I wouldn't let Jonathan have social media, even though it was out back then. And Jim Collins looked at me and goes, "Hey, you at least got to let him have Twitter." And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "All the recruiting's done on Twitter." I'm like, "How is that?" And he was right, but that opened up, at least for me personally, that opened up Pandora's box, because as soon as he had a Twitter account and started getting recruiting through that, it was like, I've got to let him get on that. And I was always kind of anti-social media, but to this day, I'm like, "Hey, man, you don't need to post so much stuff." He's like, "Dad, that's the way we got to do things, and that's how we get deals." And this whole NIL deal stole me for a loop. I don't really have any direction. I was seeking others out. I was seeking attorneys out that I knew and friends that I knew. I'm like, "Hey, how do I help him navigate this?" And most of them were like, "Hey, it's so new, we don't know what to tell you. Just, make sure he doesn't sign any contracts that are in perpetuity and 1 year deals or less or something like that." And I'm like, okay, that's a broad range. So That's been kind of a rub for us. I mean, I still to this day, I'm trusting him a lot, and still to this day, he's 21 years old. I'm still calling him, hey, take that down, or hey, you don't need to post this. And he's like, Dad, you're old, you're weird.
Sounds like my son for sure, man. You got to play with.
Dad's not with the times on social media.
You got to play with Riedel twice as well. Do you have any good Riedel Anthony stories from Gainesville or Tampa?
I love Freakum. That's what he wrote on his waistband when he was at Florida. Freakum. Yeah, I got a great Riedel story. So it doesn't start out great for Riedel, but
let's hear it.
I love him today. But so when I was at Tampa, our offensive coordinator was a guy named Mike Shula. My team favorite growing up was the Miami Dolphins. So his dad was like my hero, Don Shula. And so Mike was offensive coordinator, and it was off season time. And Mike comes up to me at this facility and says, "Hey, who do you like out of Riedel Anthony and Ike Hilliard?" And I said, "Well, if I was drafting, because at that point they weren't projecting Ike to go as high as he was." And I said, "If I was drafting, I'd draft Ike." And Ike went really super high that draft, and nobody was kind of out of the blue. And so they drafted Riedel, and I felt kind of bad because I kind of dissed Riedel a little bit. But I loved Riedel as well, and man, he brought an explosiveness. He had kind of that swagger that you need on teams, kind of like an Eric Rhett type. Just had a lot of swag, a lot of talk, and could back it up. And the guy was fast, returned kicks, and take the deep ball to the house. And it's still, when I talk to him today, down from the bottom, him and Fred Weary, not Fred Weary, Fred Taylor, down south at Belle Glade. Man, love that guy. Still, when I see him, hug up on him and tell him how special he was. But that was my funny Riedel story. I was trying to get us to draft Ike instead.
I had a question. I've gotten to know Lawrence Wright a little bit. He's
L-Dog.
What was he like in the locker room? Because he's still a character to this day.
It's still a character to this day. So if I were to smile real big, you could probably see I've got a chip in my front tooth from L-Dog. Lawrence.
So is Joey Kent.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was that game, but we were at a home game and we were in stretch, and I wasn't buckled up. I had my helmet on, but he was always fired up. Practice, games. He was one of those guys that you just, you got to have on a team. And he headbutted me in stretch. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't have a mouthpiece in or nothing. And after he headbutted me, he walked off, and I was spitting out pieces of teeth. So
that's insane.
L-Dog Productions. He always had. He's always had. If there was NIL around back when we played, L-Dog would have had all the deals because he was always hustling somewhere or another.
Oh man! Well, gentlemen, any final questions, final thoughts before we let Jason get on with his day?
No, I enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Sure. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. Certainly we're rooting on your son. We're excited to see him in the orange and blue, but it was an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and hopefully we can get you on in the future and talk a little bit more about your time. I
appreciate it. Good hanging out with you guys. I really do. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Bye-bye.
Jason Odom, All-American. Great conversation. Really enjoyed our time with him. Before we get back on to talking about spring practice again on the defensive side of the ball, let's give a shout out to our friends over at Alumni Hall. Go visit them on Archer Road, or go visit them on alumnihall.com if you're looking for anything from a baseball perspective, gymnastics, basketball, football. They'll be getting some new spring polos. And for football here in the not too distant future, go check them out, alumnihall.com, or visit them on Archer Road. Let's get back to the defensive side of the ball. Nick, what are we seeing on defense?
I really like Cameron Jackson from Memphis. Talked to a couple people around the Memphis program, and I think the only negative that I heard is maybe takes plays off sometimes as a 300-pounder. I get that, but you'd rather be a guy that the coach has to say whoa rather than go. But if you've got McClellan there and you've got Big Dez, you don't need to ask him to play 50 snaps. Hey, play 35 snaps a game. Go all out 35 times. I really like him. I think Trahada. I'm going to mess that up.
I always call him Trahada, but I learned
Mitchell.
that J's are silent. Yeah, Mitchell.
He has stepped right in already into that Ventrell Miller role, making calls, making checks, really vocal.
Black names rarely are pronounced how they spelled, so I'm gonna think both of you guys are wrong.
Yeah, the strong J.
What would be your pronunciation?
What'd you say, real quick? Let me see if I could get it right. What'd you say, Nick?
Trahaja.
Taharja? No. What'd you say, Dan?
I said Tarada.
Tarada? Taraje. Give me Taraje.
Taraje Mitchell.
Taraje Mitchell.
That could work.
I'm just.
We need clarification, Nick.
I was wrong on Keontae. I've been wrong on black names before. I could be wrong again, but
I literally asked Jaden Hill on Saturday, and he told me. Can't remember. But anyway, I like him. Step right in, 5th-year player. Obviously was in the playbook because he's out there making calls with Derek Wingo out after his second surgery. That means Jamar James is there next to him. I really haven't seen Manny Nunnery a lot. He was last, right, from Houston. Hadn't seen him a lot or Deuce a lot. Like really, the ones right now, clear cut, are Shamar and Trahaja.
Derek Wingo is out this spring as well.
Yeah, Wingo had shoulder surgery right after the bowl game, and then foot surgery. So shout out to Derek Wingo. Derek Wingo, Ventrell got tossed out of the Vandy game in the second half. So Derek was going to have to start against FSU. Broke his foot on Monday in practice. And they were just like, he was like, I got to play 30 minutes. That's it, on a broken foot. So shout out to Derek Wingo.
What are you hearing about Caleb Banks? I do see some videos. He had a good get off. What are you hearing about him in the trenches?
The players, his teammates like him. I think I view him more as a project, a guy that you get a little bit of run this year, but you're projecting him to maybe be a starter next year.
So I have an update. This is breaking news for Stadium and Gale. If you look at the Ohio State media guy, we have Taraja Mitchell.
Nailed it.
Breaking news.
Nick got it.
Nailed it.
We got to hear from Taraja.
I think he said Taraje. But
I said
oh, you did. Yeah, okay. So Caleb, I'm sorry, Nick, you were talking about Caleb Banks?
Yeah, I think he's more of a project, a guy that that will probably make a bigger impact next year. When I'm looking inside, I think Tyreek Sapp is playing a lot of strong side defensive end. They've thrown Princely over to Jack. I think that's a great move for Princely, especially I think Princely's mind might be made up. Like he's ready to go to the NFL after his junior year, and you need a quarterback in the NFL. You need someone to protect your quarterback, and then you need someone to go hit the other guy's quarterback. If he can put up double-digit sacks at that Jack position, I think he can help himself a lot. Don't know if that's permanent though either. It might be just cross training. But I like Tyreek Sapp. I thought it was crazy last year. They had him play nose tackle at some point early on in the season. You just need to let him play defensive end, maybe tackle, but I think it's an all right line. I want to see Jamari Lyons, redshirt freshman. What did you do last year? How have you gotten better? I think the same thing with Jalen Humphreys. Now you're a redshirt junior. Can you? Is it like? Nah, I'm not going to curse. Poop or get off the pot. Like, what are you doing here? You've been here 4 years. Time to make an impact. And Dez, like the weight, you got to get the weight under control.
Yeah, I think he's every bit that 449. He's probably a little bit lighter now. But the videos and pictures that we're seeing is that he's definitely absolutely carrying at least 4 bills out there right now. A mid 4 bills. We've got Kamari Wilson, and Miguel Mitchell as starting safeties. What are we seeing at defensive back on the cornerback side, Nick?
Well, at cornerback, I think there's been a bunch of guys that have been out non-contact, including Devin Moore. I've seen Jaden Hill playing a little nickel. And if you can get Marshall Hill and Devin Moore on the field at the same time, I like that cornerback room.
What about Jalen Kimber? You putting him in that group as well?
Kimber's out there. He's been just outside, I think. Okay. I'm forgetting his name. Perkins has been back and forth. So the safeties really work with the nickels, and the corners work on their off on their own. It's a little more together now since Corey Raymond has the whole room. But I'm gonna have questions about safety, and I like Kamari Wilson as a player. I like Miguel Mitchell. I think maybe even more. Shout out to Silk, was the first one on that.
He was
on that wave. But Austin Armstrong is going to ask a lot out of the safeties to be vocal, to know what 10 other guys are doing on the field every play. And these guys just don't really have any experience. So you're kind of in the deep end swimming right now, trying to make these calls and checks that you didn't have to make before. And I think it's such an important position for what the defense is going to be. So need to see some rapid improvement.
Okay. What are we – I know that you mentioned it kind of briefly there, but what are we seeing different out of Corey Raymond now having the entire defensive backfield? Is it a lot more cross-training? Is it splitting them into different drills? They're doing the same drill just with a group of, 20 instead of a group of, 10 now? What's kind of the temperature there?
Practice looks the same. Austin Armstrong's been over there a lot, working with safeties and mainly safeties, but safeties and corners. He doesn't have a position room, so he kind of floats around during practice. I thought it was weird initially when he didn't have a position group to coach. But I kind of like, if you're the coordinator, you can kind of have a 30,000 foot view and go and see everything during a practice. Nothing's really changed there. They run the same stuff, and Austin helps out, and they've got 36 graduate assistants that are over there as well.
Things you love to hear. Let's see. We had a big recruiting weekend as well here at the University. Actually, before we do that, Nick, you guys got the chance to talk to Austin Armstrong for the first time over the weekend on Saturday. Tell us a little bit about that conversation.
Talks a lot, talks fast, talks a lot. He was impressive. He told us he grew up around Tuscaloosa. Family were Alabama fans. And at some point, I think early on, he said he realized not tall, not fast, love football, probably can't play it. So he wanted to be a coach. He said he went to a career day in elementary school dressed as Steve Spurrier. That's why he wears the visor. Was he just telling stories to make fans like him? I don't know, but it seemed real. He went into like his coaching tree, and I think the reason why Billy was comfortable making this hire when he did is that he coached with Patrick Toney. He coached with I'm going to forget the guy's last name, Ron something, who was the defensive coordinator before Toney, or linebackers coach before Toney. It's going to be the same verbiage, a lot of the same schemes, but I think it'll be more aggressive. I don't know, like Todd Grantham and Gage 8 aggressive, but I expect them to blitz and bring pressure and try to disguise some things. He mentioned one thing: a lot of defenses are either multiple on the back end or multiple on the front end. He said we can be multiple in both. I think it's a lot on his plate. You show up in practice has already started. You're 29 years old and you're coming from the Sun Belt. You're going to have some real deal offenses to figure out this season. But he won the press conference. He was impressive, really enthusiastic, and the players love him.
Yeah, talked about Billy Napier. He was a quality control guy, or a GA with Billy Napier and his team. He reached out to Kirby Smart when he was at Georgia. Napier did, and they gave Austin Armstrong an opportunity to be a QC coach with them. He goes over to Southern Miss, and then he mentioned This is Austin Armstrong talking. If I was not at Georgia and working at Louisiana, Will Hall, who was the coach, probably couldn't have hired a 27-year-old unexperienced defensive coordinator. A lot of it kind of trails back to him. Sorry, read multiple sentences all over the place. So obviously spoke highly of Billy Napier, talked a lot about aggressiveness, talked a lot about trying to work with the players that they have, not just try to shove a scheme in. Obviously had a lot of things to say that spoke very highly about the University of Florida and everything. So certainly excited to see his time, but at 29 years old, replaces 30-year-old Patrick Toney leading the Gators defense and the youngest SEC, and I believe the youngest coordinator in the Power Five right now. All right, gentlemen, with that being said, we're getting towards the end of our show here, but the Gators did have a big weekend of recruiting. Let me pull that list up from you, Nick. The Gators on March 11th featured 2025 prospect, number 1 overall offensive tackle, David Sanders, number 2 safety, Xavier Filsame, number 9 ranked offensive tackle Fletcher Westfall, who I knew is very high on the Florida Gators board, and I believe he is very high in the University of Florida as well. On 300 safety, Brandon Jacob. On 300 athlete running back, Kanan Daniels. 4-star defensive lineman DeAndre Robinson. Fast rising wide receiver Kay Bates. UCF defensive lineman commit Sincere Edwards. 2025 edge Armando Blount, 2025 edge Landon Merritt, 2025 defensive lineman Jalen Wiggins, 2025 running back Akelin Deer, and then Gators commit Miles Graham was on campus. He spoke very highly of his visit. Edge Jamonte Waller was on campus. Newly offered running back Micah Welch, 3-star offensive tackle Derek Plaz, cornerback Telvin Metcalf, and 2027 quarterback Trent Searburn were all on campus. So Nick Silk, Nick, I know this isn't your bag as much, but Silk, any thoughts on recruiting other than Wardell Mack, top 30 prospect, has scheduled his visit to the University of Florida on April 8th as well?
No, it's visit season. Love the high quality of guys they're getting on campus, but it's that time of the year where you get kids on campus and a lot of offers going out, a lot of visits. I do got a recruiting take. So one recruiting take. I seen just some crystal balls that went in for Will Levy, 3-star athlete right now out of West Palm, goes to Newman. He's over there with Jack Daniels, former Gator that was at Dwyer. We should be so lucky to get Will Levy. That's my take. Like the people that complain talking about, oh, we're getting 3-star predictions. We would be lucky to get the kid. When it's all said and done, he's going to be a top 150 talent. First year, running track last year, broke 10.6 in 100 meters. Just not like haven't been training. Now that he's hitting his stride with football, ceilings is not a thing for him. Will Levy's going to be a top 150 kid. A kid that's going to play very early in college. Explosive, could play both sides of the ball. I like him as a DB. Because I'm a DB at heart, but could play receiver as well. I think Florida State and some other programs recruiting him at receiver. I think we're recruiting him at DB. Good offer by Corey Raymond. It'll all pay out and it makes sense in a few months. Just like Jakeem Jackson and also Dijon, both of those guys were 87 type ranked 3-star guys this time last year. And as the evals played themselves out, top 150 talents, top 200 around that ballpark. That's the vibes.
So you think diamond in the rough?
Nah, ain't no diamond in the rough. He's a real deal right now. You'll see as the camp season play out, he can play. Like kid can straight out play football. They got a couple kids. Josh Philistine on that team, and also Nari is a kid that playing defensive tackle. Tanari that can play ball as well. Zach got some killers. He getting the best kids from the county over there. Now that he's at a private school, not a public school, you're gonna see Carter Newman in a lot of state championships and go on a run here, similar to American Heritage and St. Thomas Aquinas.
Gators do get a few. Silk mentioned one. Josiah Davis gets a a prediction in the recruiting prediction machine on 3 from Corey Bender, 2024 athlete from Nashville, Georgia, unranked right now, but I would imagine that we will start to see that. And I would also caution anybody with takes right now on rankings is that you're looking at a lot of juniors, you're looking at a lot of kids that are making that step up, maybe, with their sophomore, junior year film still getting out, still getting evaluated. We just finished the 2023 recruiting cycle. So you'd imagine to start to see a lot more evaluations and a lot more time spent on these guys. Gators are trending a little bit for offensive tackle Jonathan Daniels. They're moving up. FSU is still right now has the most percentage for him right now, but we're starting to see an uptick in him for University of.
They had him on commit watch this past weekend. He ain't pop.
Yep.
Shout out to that.
Anthony Carey, running back, new leader for Florida in the RPM. And then Joseph Ionata, who's a 3-star interior offensive lineman. And then DeAndre Robinson, the defensive lineman, highly ranked 4-star. So we're just starting to get into that time where we're going to start to see a lot of change in the rankings and everything else, but definitely stay tuned as we will update the best we can on recruiting. All right, guys, let's get into our final part of the show. But before we do that, I want to implore you guys to go check out the Gatorverse.io. Again, Gatorverse.io. A few updates if you are part of the Locker Mania special that they have. So if the men's basketball team wins the NIT, buyers of their collectible will get their money back. Players will still keep all of their money. So go check them out, Gatorverse.io. Invest in the basketball team and their NIT run. I will cover that here in a second. The gymnastics clinic is still ripping and roaring for March 25th.
Did we sell any cards?
We got to get these 20 cards. So
did we sell any cards?
The message from Brian Klatsky said gymnastics are selling like hotcakes.
Love that.
Yeah.
Can't wait for your floor routine.
So
no leotard.
Remember, if we buy 20, I will do the floor routine. And then the TBT new player commitment announcement will come here shortly. So stay tuned. Again, Gatorverse.io. It helps the players put money directly in their pocket through NIL. Nick, it's your time to shine, my friend. Baseball rips and roars this weekend. And during the week, Gators go 5-0. Give us the update.
Not a good Siena team. Bunch of guys from upstate New York don't even get to play fall ball because it's snowing. So Florida wins in the midweek, gets 2. Josh Rivera had a 9 RBI game with a grand slam.
That's a record, right?
I don't know that. No, it's not a record. JJ Shorts had I forget the year, but he had a 4 home run game against Stetson. I think he had 9 home runs in that.
Maybe tied.
Florida struggled a little bit Friday, squeaking out a 3-2 win. I think Kevin O'Sullivan put the fear of God in them the next day because they showed up and got 2-run rules Saturday and Sunday. This whole month has just been leading up to this week. You get Alabama Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the start of SEC play. Alabama was rolling, and I think they hosted Columbia, lost 2 of 3 to Columbia, going into the weekend undefeated. So Alabama comes in this week. Florida just has 1 midweek game, UNF on Tuesday, and note the schedule change: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, not Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Schedule change noted.
Also, it's Saturday, so they might do a doubleheader Friday.
Oh, perfect. Well, note the change, listeners. In other Gator sports news, we've mentioned it. The Gators basketball program is in the NIT. They're number 4 seed. They're hosting number 7 UCF on Wednesday at 7 p.m. The Gators women's team was selected for the women's NIT. This is their third straight postseason performance. 9th overall time in the women's NIT. It's the first time that they've qualified for 3 consecutive postseason tournaments since they did it from 2008 to 2014. Seeding will be announced later today on Monday. Gymnastics closed the regular season with a road high of 198.175 to win the Texas Women's University Quad. Softball goes 5-1 on the week, including Lexi Delbray getting her first career no-hitter against Rutgers. Men's golfer Yushin Lin was named to the Spring Haskins Award list on Friday, which is considered the most prestigious award for collegiate golf and presented annually to the most outstanding male golfer. 3 golfers right now that play at the University of Florida, or golf from the University of Florida, are ranked in the top 16 of the PGA Tour's top men's golfers. And then finally, track and field, Jasmine Moore absolutely destroys the competition, gets, let's see, 2 national titles at the NCAA indoor. She jumped 15.12 meters on the jump. Is this triple jump? Indoor long jump. Sorry, 15.12 meters on the indoor long jump. Sorry. She's won 12 SEC and NCAA horizontal jump titles as a
It was
Florida
triple jump.
Gator.
Daniel?
You have quite a conundrum here.
Here.
No, it says that the final jump earned Moore her second national title in as many days and gave her back-to-back indoor long jump titles. So maybe she got the other long jump title. Maybe you're right, Nick. That's what I get for reading an article live on air. Talitha Diggs medaled on her second day, earning a bronze for her performance in the women's 400, 50.49. Alita Van finished 4th in women's shot put. Layla Owens, Jayla Hollis, Vanessa Watson, and Talitha Digg finished 6th in the 4x4. And the women finished 3rd overall in the 2023 NCAA Indoor Championships. PJ Austin won bronze in the 60 meters with a time of 6.56. Ryan Willie finished in 2nd, running a 44.93 in the 400 meters. And then Robert Gregory came in 3rd in the 200 meter, running a 20.22, the fastest indoor 200 meters in school history. The men also finished 3rd, and they will begin their outdoor season on March 23rd and 24th in Tallahassee at the FSU Relays. With that being said, I think that leads us to the end of the show. Silk, I know it's your song of the week. Any final thoughts on anything going on in Gator Nation?
I don't have any final thoughts.
No final thoughts. Good show, Jason Odom.
Good vibes.
Great
Man.
Conversation.
Positivity. That's my final thoughts, man. It's off season. Enjoy it. You know, we should get some. I'm loving the practice clips. Love all the media and stuff that we're getting. Somebody said something about the view. Somebody on the moon. Lagway on the moon. What's the thing?
Miles Graham.
Miles Graham was on the moon.
Shout out to Miles Graham. Shout out to the VU folks. I need to get on the VU. Yeah,
let's get a Stadium and Gale view in each of our respective homes. Perfect. Well, Silk, you got song of the week. What do you got for us?
What do I have? I'm just gonna go with what I've been listening to lately, man. Let me get a little Drizzy. Nah, Drake be shutting us down. Like they come for us. Can't go Drake. Let's go some R&B. She Loves Me, Toby. Good R&B vibes.
Perfect.
Spread love.
If you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and that subscribe button. That really helps. If you are listening to us on the podcast, please go rate and review us. That helps with all the algorithms as we continue to grow this podcast. Remember our sponsors, Alan Horn, the Gatorverse.io, just Gatorverse.io, Alumni Hall, and Home Field Apparel. And we will see you guys.
Yo, real quick. Go check the Jervon Dexter where we interviewed him on Friday, a solo interview. Absolutely dope. If you're listening right now live or you listen to the recorded version, exit out, go on YouTube, whatever you listen to on, and check that Jervon Dexter interview out. Very good stuff.
Yeah, great conversation. He's climbing up the draft boards right now. So we're excited to see Jervon, but really Just a very good conversation. Really shed a lot of light into his recruiting, his time at UF, and then what the experience is like at the combine and everything else. So really enjoyed that interview. Go check that out. And with that, we'll see you guys at the same corner and same time next week.